Welcome to Advent of Tessellations 2024. My name is Madonna Yoder, and you're joining hundreds of folders around the world on this 25-day journey into the infinite world of repeating patterns folded from a single sheet of paper. You'll discover many different twists in this challenge, building up to advanced patterns with hybrid hexagon twists. On the 6th day of Advent of Tess, we're folding this pattern called Pinwheels. It was first published in Origami Tessellations by Eric Gerardet, and it uses closed hexagon twists surrounded by open triangle twists, and then feeding back into more closed hexagon twists. So the base pattern is alternating closed hexagons and open triangles with 6 triangles around each hexagon and 3 hexagons around each triangle. I like it so much, it's my wedding ring now. I mean, not the pattern, but the alternation of hexagon and triangles. So this one is folded entirely from one side of the paper, and then we'll get to see the back side at the very end. So anytime you're folding all your twists on one side of the paper, it tends to create these weave type patterns on the other side. So let's go ahead and start folding. I'm using 24 grid divisions, and if you'd like to see a tutorial for that grid and get the crease pattern for today's tutorial, you can sign up for email reminders at training.gatheringfolds.com/advent if you haven't done that already. So for the closed hexagon twist, I really like to reference this to the corners of the hexagon paper. We're going to be folding a mountain fold that runs straight out to each corner and a valley fold right above it on the right hand side. And I'm saying mountain and valley because you need both of them, and then you can move to the next corner and fold the next mountain and valley. The common mistake that I see on this twist is to try and fold just the mountain folds and then add the valley folds, and that falls apart really easily, so you end up going around and around and around and around without getting all of your pleats in place. But if you fold the mountain and the valley and lay it down on the table, you really just need the outer few grid spacings to stay folded, and then you can work your way around. Notice I'm pushing up from underneath. The center is pretty high above the table. So I was pushing up from underneath to make sure that these next mountain folds didn't like drop down into a valley somewhere. Instead, let them stay as mountain potential all the way out to the edge. And now I have all 6 of my pleats because I was using my table as extra hands. So from there, I'm going to push my pleats closed more and more as I'm approaching the center. And unlike the twist that we've seen so far, the closed hexagon twist actually is going to have all of its folds on grid lines. So as I'm approaching the center, when I have just 2 grid spacings of mountain left not entirely flat on the table, I'm going to take this twist, and this is the only twist where squashing it faster helps. So all of the rest of them, moving slowly and deliberately is the best thing to do. But for this one, it really is a sharp twist around that makes it work better. This will rotate more than you think it will. So this corner is going to end up all the way around to here. So it's going to be 120 degrees of rotation. I'm going to dimple the center slightly, and I need to keep a finger on that to keep it down which makes sure that all of the edges stay as mountain folds. So I'm going to bop it, grab it. I like to grab 3 sides. So bop it, grab it, and then sharp twist. And when I grab it, I'm kind of squeezing in underneath the hexagon and then sharp twist. And if it looks crumpled at the beginning, that's perfectly fine. There's no need to undo anything. What needs to happen is to gently encourage all the folds to go back to being on grid lines. So notice that smoothed out remarkably well. You can also take your bone folder underneath, and you can also fold this twist in half to open up and double check that all of your folds are in the right place. Another good way to check, especially that all your valley folds are still on grid lines, is to flip the paper over, and you can check and see if your closed hole is super tight with all the lines running straight. One thing that I also commonly see is that people won't twist all the way around. Instead, they'll end up with a back twisted twist where these lines are zigzagging to get to the corners. And the way to work around that is to take a corner, lift it up, and move it over. So it's basically creating a little valley fold and moving it over. And we get to circle the twist. And again, this is just if your twist landed down on the paper and back twisted, then we want to make sure that it's rotating all the way around to get it into this nice state where the mountain folds go straight all the way to the corner. From there, we're going to add our triangle twists. And in this situation, we're going to work all the way around, accumulating pleat overlaps, and then open the overlaps later to work on what goes there. I don't usually work this way, and often with larger grids, I'll skip that entirely. But for just the very center, then I'm working more or less identically on all 6 of these pleats and then coming back and resolving overlaps. So for our first triangle twist, we're going to use a spacing that I call tube pleat spacing, which means that I've got my valley fold under here. I've got another valley fold 2 spaces away. The mountain folds for each of these pleats are 1 space outside of the valley folds, which means that when they are folded, the mountain folds touch together and form a tube. So I'll be using that terminology of tube pleat spacing a lot in the coming days. These are going to be open triangle twists. So we're going to have our third mountain fold outlining our target grid triangle. And I should also mention we're opening the existing pleat to find that target grid line. We are not finding the target grid line while the pleat is still folded. So for our central twist, we worked from the corners in. For everything else, we want to work from the pleat overlaps out. So next we want to go up. So the order that you go around for these patterns is entirely dependent on which side of the paper you're going to be folding the next twist on. It's not something that I expect you to be able to anticipate early in your tessellation folding career, shall we say. But because I've folded hundreds of tessellations, I can recognize, oh, our next twist is on this side, we need to go this way. So I'm going to rotate these two parallel plates that are further apart from each other so they're headed off to my right hand side. I'm going to have that same spacing. We see that pleat in there. We're going to have one spacing until the valley, another spacing until the mountain, our third mountain of this open triangle is going to outline our target triangle shape. And we are going to be creating a pleat overlap that we can pin in place as we find our third pleat and squash the new triangle twist. From there, I'll rotate the paper so my new pair of parallel pleats is on my right hand side, and I'll repeat that step, putting in the valley fold and then the third direction, or valley and mountain, along this way before putting in the next pair of pleats going out that way. Rotating once again, I'll put in my new pleat that's causing the overlap and new fold completing the triangle. And rotating, we'll repeat exactly the same way once again. And squash. Rotating once again, I'll have the same fold coming down here, and this time we're going to have a pleat overlap coming up here as well. So one thing to notice about these pleat overlaps is that this one is slightly different from this one. The only difference between them is the order. Was it this pleat that happened first and then this one, or this pleat that happened first and then this one? So that order makes it easier or harder to open depending on what side of the paper you're on. This one's our odd one out, so I'm going to go ahead and start with that one next. This is the type that is a little bit harder to open on this side. And I just wanted to include it to demonstrate in case you had done your triangles in a different order or had skipped a pleat around your hexagon, then you would have a mix of the overlaps that I have everywhere else and this one. So I'm going to push from the back to open up my pleats. And I'm noticing that my mountain folds, if I extend them until they meet each other, are on these grid lines. That is going to define, that intersection point is going to define the very center of my closed hexagon twist. Then I'm going to extend mountain folds, and again, when I say mountain folds, I mean mountain and its associated valley. So you need to already have an awareness of which way around this hexagon is going to twist. One shortcut for figuring that out is which way did the central hexagon twist. These folds are going to exactly match that central twist. And then for these tiny folds at the edge, there's not much valley to put in. So I'll make sure that they're as happy as they can be. And then I'll bop the center of the twist and grab it and kind of squeezing in with the fingers underneath, give it a sharp twist to get it to lay down flat. From here, I'm going to rotate, and I'll work around clockwise this time. So with the triangles, I was working counterclockwise. This time I'm working clockwise. It doesn't make a huge difference, but it means that instead of working in this area where there's a lot of things overlapping, I can work in this area that's more open. So let's go with, we've got these pleats from triangles that are coming together. We're going to open up the pleat overlap to see where the center of our new hexagon is. And this time when I'm running a pleat up towards the top, I notice I'm crossing another pleat. So instead of crossing that pleat, I can put in a three-way intersection of mountain folds and lay that down flat instead. So now this new pleat is never going to cross my next direction of pleat, which if I had more grid, those would eventually cross and kind of tie up that area of the paper. Next, I'm going to put in the other long pleat headed down towards the bottom. And again, I'm never just putting in mountains, it's always mountain and valley. And start working everything down to where it needs to go. And now my hexagon has a pretty secure platform that I can bop, grab, and twist around. Here I need to iron out that one corner a little bit, but it's mostly good to go. Again, I don't expect yours to behave exactly the same way all the time. Especially if you're using different paper. I'm using Skytone, which is the easiest paper to work with for this kind of origami tessellation. You can find links to where to get that below the video if you haven't already signed up for the email reminders and gotten those links already. And so this is possibly working a little easier for me than it is for you. And also, like, having the experience of doing hundreds of tessellations before does give me a bit of a leg up. So next up, we've got this triangle arrangement of pleats set up. We want to go ahead and put that into an open twist form and go ahead and squash the twist. For the next sets of repeats, we're going to do exactly the same thing. So we're going to rotate so that our prior hexagon is up above. We'll find the overlapping pleats of the triangles and open up. So the benefit of the order that we did the overlaps, which is coming from the order that we folded the triangles, that when we open this up, both of those mountain folds stay as mountain folds the whole way in to the center of the hexagon. So that's a pretty straightforward thing to identify. So with the other way around, one of them would be sucked into a valley under there. We would have to dig it out. But with this way, they're both sitting right on top. Then we're going to have our pleat coming out, and we could set up the whole triangle twist right now, but I'd rather have a stable squashing surface, and so I'll set that up like it's a closed triangle and then flip that pleat going to the edge so it's laying down in place. Then we can get our remaining long pleat going down to the edge, because even if we do these two short ones before we do this long one, they're just going to come unraveled again. And then get what little we can of those short pleats in place before we bop it, grab it, give it a little squeeze, and twist it around. Taking the time to smooth out any wrinkled corners and edges before we press the whole thing with the bone folder. Then we can return to the triangle, shift that pleat one spacing down, make sure our valley is on the new hexagon side of the new mountain fold, and squash our new triangle twist. From there, we'll rotate around, do the exact same thing again, opening the pleat overlap to find where those mountain folds intersect, running our new mountain up until it hits the pleat from the previous hexagon, and putting in a three-way intersection of mountain folds like we practiced on day 1, and actually that we've been practicing in every day since. Put in our long pleat down below and get those short pleats as happy as they can be, which is basically have a valley under this teeny triangle segment there, and have the suggestion of mountain and valley on those two. Then bop it and grab it, give it a sharp twist. That is a less than happy corner, but it can be pulled out after the fact. So less than happy valley fold. I was going a little slow and paused in the middle there. You really do want to get your hexagons down as quickly as you can. And then we want to set up our new open triangle twist and squash, and then rotate. I've got my intersection from the two triangles down here, set that up, find the center of my hexagon, take the what would be a pleat overlap, turn that into a three-way intersection of mountains instead, and run my new mountain fold down through this longer distance, making sure, again, to always add the valley folds. Whenever I'm talking about adding a mountain, there is also a valley. And bop it, grab it. Let's do a sharp twist. That one went much smoother. And shift the pleat and squash the open triangle twist. So usually when you're working around adding more hexagons and triangles, like let's say you had a 32 fold or 48 fold grid and you wanted to fold more of this pattern, what I would recommend is adding 2 triangles for every new hexagon. In the case of the first hexagon that you add in a new ring, that'll typically be 2 triangles closer in, and then it'll be a triangle on the inside and the outside for every new one, finishing with a hexagon. So opening the overlaps from those 2 triangles. Now I have new overlaps on the top, which I'll turn into a triangle, and the bottom, which I will also turn into a triangle that is laying down. So on this one, I had the pleat going through here. Well, I had something a little bit more messy than that, but I'm going to lift up this mountain. I'm not going to let that mountain get stuck underneath to do a triangle wrap down below. That would be if I was doing a triangle twist on the opposite side. I'm going to let that mountain come all the way up to the mountain of my new triangle, or of the pleat from the first hexagon of this ring around the center, and then that will lay down like so. And then we can get the rest of our pleats in order and bop it, grab it, twist it. A little bit of a messy twist and delivery there, but it ended up getting down in place. So like I was saying, with adding 2 triangles for each new hexagon, if you're doing more repeats, that last hexagon in the ring is going to have 2 triangles on the outside that are being added. So the reason for doing this is that you don't want to have a massive accumulation of pleat overlaps before you put in your new hexagon twists. I would much rather deal with my pleat overlaps as I go instead of accumulating 6 of them on all sides of the paper, like we did for this mini example here. So if you would like to see some alternative ways to repeat this pattern and all of the other patterns we've been working for, you can check out the Advent of Tessellations 2024 ebook, which is available at gatheringfolds.com. So yeah, big reveal is we've got this weave pattern on the back, and we can also take a look at the backlighting to see where this pattern gets the name Pinwheels. So this is a really neat one. There are actually multiple ways of repeating the pattern. So we're not just limited to alternating forever. So that is one of the things that I talk about in the ebook and demonstrate with photos and crease patterns. So happy folding, everyone. If you enjoyed folding this pattern, make sure to post on Instagram or Facebook with hashtag Advent of Tess and tag me at Gathering Folds so that I can share what you folded with everyone else. So happy folding, everyone, and see you for tomorrow's pattern, which actually, while we're there, starts almost exactly the same, except this time the next hexagon is on the opposite side of the paper. Who knew? You could do that too. So happy folding, and see you for tomorrow's tutorial.